It is. We've been waiting for it against an FBS opponent. A victory Sunday here on the Florida Atlantic Voice, presented by Robes Law Group. ROBES, robeslawgroup.com, robeslawgroup.com, the presenting partner of the Florida Atlantic Voice, and FAU takes down Rice Boca Owls over Houston Owls 27-21 at Rice Stadium in Houston. And I'm sure it feels good for us. I'm sure that it feels better for Zach Kittley to finally get that first win over an FBS opponent. A win over FAMU can only carry you so far. So Florida Atlantic, it was a fairly complete game, and we'll dive into it. Robbie Lastella, New Era Preps, is going to join us here in just a couple of moments. You're going to have to bear with me as well, because I am a discombobulated mess this morning. I knew this was going to happen. I am a complete wreck, and the reason is I'm getting old. I'm washed, and I don't handle the quick turnarounds as well as I used to. So we got back to campus last night. The team around, it was actually 10 after 4. So I finally got into my bed after driving home around 5 a.m. and took a little bit of a nap. And here I am. But I am a tragic mess this morning. But not going to let that tarnish the fact that we're talking about an FAU win. We're talking about an Owls team that's 2-3 with a winless UAB side coming to Boca Raton on Saturday. And the Owls are 1-1 in American play. And it wins over option offense teams. No matter who you're talking about, it's hard to come by. When you're FAU especially, it's hard to find wins against offense-based offenses, and I thought that, or option-based offenses, and I thought that Florida Atlantic played extremely well, for the exception of one instance. But unlike the Memphis game, the big play hitter against them came early, where they had plenty of time to overcome. Robbie Lastella, New Era Preps, jumping in as always here. It is the day after Florida Atlantic Voice. It's the Rice edition, presented by Robes Law Group, ROBES, robeslawgroup.com. I woke up this morning, Robbie, and I'm like, man, it's good to get that option offense out of the way. But in 3 weeks, it's going to be a trip to Navy, where Navy's actually like throwing and looking dangerous. And it's not just the triple option attack. It's also the fact that they put it up through the air. I don't want to dive too far into the weeds on that, but we're not done with the option offense yet. But I would say it's pretty accurate to declare that they passed the first option test this year. FAU's defense did.
Ooh, yeah, I think that went a lot better than their first test last year. I think especially, after the Memphis game, there was a lot of questions and you could tell they knew that, right? They made a big emphasis. They made a whole hype video about their eyes ahead of the game. And for better or for worse, they did that and it worked. They answered the question outside of that first drive, and Rice is going to run for a lot of yards. They ran for over 200 yards, but they didn't let the big play consistently bite them. They didn't let Rice get to the second level a ton with their run plays. And, they did a good job with their eyes. You didn't see them getting lost. Like, you didn't see the quarterback do a fake and then all of a sudden the camera's losing him and he's going up the sidelines. So none of that really happened. They had that first drive where, things happen. Team script plays, and that's what Rice should have done on their first drive. Obviously, as an FAU defense, you don't want that to happen, but you script it, and that's what's supposed to happen. And then from there, whatever happens after that is unscripted, and then it's your team versus their team. You really see what happens, and FAU's defense answered the call. And we'll see if they can do it again against a Navy team, which is going to be well-oiled. They've got Blake Horvath, who he was outside of Bryson Daly last year. He could have arguably been a Heisman contender. So that Rice definitely had a couple plays where you could tell it's a new offense, young quarterback, but that's a team I want to circle back in a couple years and see how that offense is humming, because that was a pretty good showing, in my opinion, for a first-year head coach and an offense that's difficult to learn. So, but credit to FAU for stepping up in the run. We saw them against Memphis step up in the pass rush department, and this week they answered the call in the run defense department. So good stuff from the defense, and gotta keep that going though. UAB is going to come in with a different type of high-powered approach next week, and although they've looked, as Drew said, horrendous, they still got that high-powered offense, and if you lapse, all of a sudden you're in a dogfight with UAB.
Yep.
It's Trent Dilfer's. That's what he wants.
Drew in the chat, and Drew, first one in the chat. Feel free to fill up the chat, your questions, your impressions of yesterday's win over Rice. That's what we call it the day after. This is for you as much as it is for Robbie and I to break down the game. But Drew says, "Good morning, gentlemen." Good morning, Drew. UAB looked horrendous yesterday. Let's get back to 500. Yep, absolutely. And before we get into the minutia of the win over Rice, just from a broad perspective, these two games, Rice and UAB, this was, if you had any designs of bowl eligibility, these were going to be the two games that were going to determine whether or not you gave yourself a chance. And so you've checked one off. You've gone on the road. In theory, the most difficult task of the two to get the job done. And then you've got UAB next week, who is winless. Trent Dilfer has been perpetually on the hot seat as the head coach for the last calendar year. But you've got Kitten at the quarterback. They can throw the ball all over the place. As we know, no shame in losing at home to Army. Been there, done that. But this is a great opportunity. And again, most importantly, you handled the first order of business, which was that win over Rice. Zach Kittley said something post-game, and I think that for some who are of the cynical type, and they hear Zach Kittley say, "I am proud of my team because they came out the more excited team. They were more excited to come play football yesterday." And I know a lot of people, Robbie, that would poo-poo that and say that's such a dorky, lame coach thing to say. But it resonated with me because it would be easy for FAU to trudge into this one after being outscored 31-7 against Memphis in the fourth quarter. They've suffered a death quarter every single game during the course of the season, at least on the FBS slate. And they came out, and there was an energy, and it was tangible. You could see it on the sideline. The body language was good, even after getting hit with the 68-yard touchdown run. It was really encouraging to see. And you always worry about when things start to go south, especially in this era of college football, the portal era. You always worry about maybe losing some guys or losing the team, confidence starting to wane. And there were no impressions that took place yesterday. Like that I agree with Zach Kittley. That might be the part that makes me feel best, is that these guys are hanging in. Like there is still a really strong belief that, hey, like this whole thing is salvageable, and why not? But it's easy to get down when things aren't going well. But now sitting 2-3, 1-1 in the American, you have a home game upcoming. It feels pretty good right now.
Yeah, the response from the team after a big loss like that is huge. I look at a guy like Leon Hart Jr., right? Coach Kittley said in the press conference on Tuesday that he was on thin ice. That can go one of two ways. Yeah. Leon could have pouted, or he could have used it as fuel, and I don't know if he did, but it sure looks like he did. He finished with 10 tackles, 1.5 for loss. He was the leader on defense that FAU needed there in that middle of the field. The statistics back it up too. His average depth of tackle was 1.2, which is absurd. I mean,
go ahead, repeat that, and just if you could, like the significance of that for a linebacker like Leon Hart, where the depth of tackle was.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends exactly where he's lining up on each play, but 1.2 yards. I mean, he's coming in there and shutting down a run play before it's even getting going. And you look at the top 3 linebackers in the country in terms of snaps played against the run, their average depths of tackle are 4, 3, and 4.2. So just for comparison, look where Leon's is. He's down there with where basically the defensive line is. And, sometimes he's a little bit closer on a blitz type of show, but a lot of times he's closer to that 3, 4 yards back. So he's coming up, getting his nose in there and making a play, which after a week where he got ejected, Kitley said he was on the not on hot seat, on thin ice. And he comes out and answers it. That's a really, really good response. And I think that credits to the whole team. The whole team came up fired up. I mean, I look at the play where Chris Keys batted down that bomb play from Rice. We saw them last week against Memphis. That bomb play was a touchdown to Bram Cortez. This week, FAU obviously was a different type of play. We had 3 defenders in coverage, but batted down, and they were excited. The excitement was there all game. And, credit to them for getting up for this game because they had to. It's not an easy place to get up. It looked like it on TV. It's just like a giant
cavernous and quiet. Did you see the official attendance figure?
I did not.
22,999. I'm all for people trying to put a silver lining on things and trying to spin a positive. It's what I do with Florida Atlantic. It's what I've made a career off of. But there was not even close to 23,000 fans at Rice Stadium last night. If you chop off I don't know, right around 21,000 of that 22,999, that would be significantly more accurate. And half of those were Zach Kitley's family behind the FAU sideline. I'm sorry, 22.99. That didn't happen last night. But Rice Stadium's weird because it is, it housed that team in a former era, a different lifetime of Rice football, where Rice was pretty much the only game in town. But we're talking 4 decades ago now. And what they should do, and I don't know if you're aware of this, Robbie. So if UAB used to play at Legion Field in Birmingham, big, massive facility, used to host the Iron Bowl, Alabama, Auburn. Alabama played a lot of games there, actually, in the Bear Bryant era. And once UAB started to fall off in football stature, they chopped off the upper deck on the far side, and it just made it feel a little more intimate, a little bit more of an appropriate venue. And I think that's probably what they need to do eventually with Rice Stadium. But it is cool to be there. I mean, this is the 75th year of Rice Stadium. This was where John F. Kennedy made his we choose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. I think I'm paraphrasing JFK, so apologies to the family, except for Robert. And then hosted Super Bowl VIII, the last Super Bowl, by the way. This is Mike Marenshko, pre-half post-game host, who pointed this out to me. Last Super Bowl with the goalpost in the front of the end zone. How about that? So there's a lot of tradition, a lot of history there, but it is a large canyon. Oh man, it's sort of the bring your own energy. It's like when FAU basketball would go to Rice, and Dusty May would tell the team, hey, bring your own energy. And so that's what they would have to do, because there were 7 people in the stands. Rasta, he messages in the chat, and again, hit the chat. Avoiding the failed 4th down attempt that set up short field for the opponent was good to see. Yeah, let me take it conversely. FAU being the team that defense came up with a 4th down stop to get the ball at midfield. That was refreshing. It was a 4th and 3 for Rice. This was all the way back in the first quarter. And 4th and 3 decision. Chase Jenkins ends up taking it himself out of the spread option. And he gets Wilkie Denaughted at the line of scrimmage. Denaud was at least there to help impede the progress. You had Eric Brantley in the vicinity as well. I think that Gavin Marcelin was part of the proceedings, but FAU ends up getting the turnover on downs, and Florida Atlantic would go on to score a touchdown on that. It's amazing how much better it feels when you reverse the way things have been trending. FAU was, after that 4th down stop, very much on the front foot the rest of the night for the most part. That made a difference. That was an early momentum shifter that mattered for the entirety of the game.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at 4th down specifically, FAU, they only went for it twice, 2 for 2, but they capitalized on those 4th down. You look at the big one, 4th and 4 there, to Wasim down the sidelines. I mean, that's like an FAU type of fourth down. We're going for it, and we're going all the way for it, and they got it. Great ball. I mean, arguably the best ball of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say that is the best pass Caden Veldkamp has made all year long. That 4th and 5, 37-yard line, just dropping it in a bucket between two defenders, pinned against the near pylon, and it wasn't even though he was bracketed by two defenders, the catch wasn't even that difficult for Wasim as long as he concentrated on it, because that ball it could not have been thrown more perfect. It was a teardrop from a higher power. What Caden Veldkamp did there. That was a huge cash in. And Robbie, I talked to you about, or I mentioned it last week. FAU went for it on a 4th and long in the fourth quarter, where it looked like Caden Veldkamp was expecting a free play, and his intended target was Dom Henry, who also got held, and they didn't bother to throw a flag on that. But this was another one that felt like Veldkamp believed there was going to be a free play. Like, there is a Rice player in the neutral zone as Fire Cable is delivering the ball to Caden Veldkamp, and once again, no flag came, and so Veldkamp's throwing it up top because he thinks that this is at least a free play, but FAU comes out on the right side of it because it was perfectly thrown to Assad Wasim. But I don't know what's going on there. Like, I don't quite understand what's happening, because there are players in the neutral zone. Veldkamp has a very hard count, and he's not getting rewarded for it. It's very weird.
I don't know. He's got to go into the ayahuasca tunnel with Aaron Rodgers or something.
Yeah.
How he gets it done. I mean, I don't know. That's just whenever I picture those type of plays, it always goes to Rodgers, and he seems to get it done. But yeah, that did happen, and they did get a free play on another third down or another fourth down, or it was third down, and then that got negated, which that was earlier in the drive. But bringing up my point about that play is, after that got negated, it was, I think, in the second quarter there, they completed it to Nonar when they hopped off sides, but Nonar had holding. And I asked Kitley after the game, because after that, they didn't try to go for the sticks again. They ran a draw and punted. Mm-hmm. And then later in the game, instead of, potentially going for it on fourth down, they ran a screen and kicked a field goal. And then they did it again. They kicked the field goal to go up 13. And so I asked, I was like, the offense seemed a little bit more conservative, not in a disrespectful way, but was that because the defense was playing well? And that's 100% what it was. So, I saw a lot on social media last week of people just assuming, Kitley's out there playing Madden with his fourth down decisions, and that's not the case. He's going to evaluate things, and he's going to do things on a week-to-week basis. Will he go for it every game at some point? Probably, but it won't be at the same rate every week. And this week, FAU needed to win possessions. They didn't need. They somehow won time of possession. No, they lost it by 3, but that's much closer than I could have ever expected.
Yeah, I mean, that time of possession, that ends up being one of the key numbers of the game. Option offenses, we know, they live off of time of possession, and FAU matched them the entire game. There were, as high-flying as this offense can be, like, they were able to grind some time off the clock in significant moments, and it was – the whole thing was well executed. And you go down immediately on that 68-yard touchdown run for Rice on the third play of the game. Quentin Jackson, another third down breakdown, and you think, we're trailing an option offense. It is really hard to come back on an option offense, and Florida Atlantic did it immediately. Yep. And from there, I mean, it's a second straight week where Florida Atlantic absolutely took it to an opponent in the first half. Like, that right there, that's going to at least keep you in a lot of games, maybe even against teams that are appreciably better. If you continue to outplay teams in the first half, you're at least giving yourself a chance. And on the road against an option offense, it paid off this week, unlike it did ultimately against Memphis. That goes back, though, to the excitement part of what we were talking about. FAU came in wanting to play more, it looked like, than Rice. And then Chris Parcells, FAU football legend, who's tuned in on this Sunday live. And don't forget, this will be in podcast form after the fact later today, when I inject myself with espresso, about 7 shots straight into my arm right after Robbie and I are done. Tight end involvement. That's all he needs to say. The player of the game yesterday, and Leon Hart was sensational. And Caden Veldkamp was phenomenal. And Easton Messer was sensational. But Michael Kirch is your player of the game. 4 catches, 84 yards. It's the most single-day yardage receiving production of any FAU tight end since Harrison Bryant had his 182, his Mackey Award clinching performance against UTSA in 2019. It's good. The tight end, it's been a desert ever since 2019 for this FAU offense. Willie Taggart's offenses, Tom Herman's offenses. Michael Kirch got off to a slow start this year. He had drops against Maryland. He did not contribute in any way, shape, or form in the contest against FAMU or against FIU, I mean. Same thing with FAMU. So now we're seeing 2 catches last week, 2 big catches on the same possession that led to a touchdown. And this week, he has the 31-yard touchdown reception on another phenomenally thrown ball from Caden Veldkamp. He has the touchdown that gives FAU the cushion it needed in the third quarter. He's becoming a problem for defenses. Like, that's just another, like, Platt and Messer and Henry. Now, defenses need to start worrying about 89. That's a great thing for Zach Kittley and how he can open this thing up now.
Yeah, I mean, I said it last week, and people, somebody in the press box laughed at me. I said it after each catch. I was like, "Oh, that was Mike's biggest play of the season so far." And then I said it again. I was like, "Oh, new biggest play." And then this week, it was like every play is his best play of the season. He's slowly been having, like, just breaking out, and that's what we kind of saw. I mean, if you look at the videos of him playing at St. Tom or just Thomas More, you can tell he's a pass catcher. He is a tight end. And that competition he was facing, although some of it is questionable, the talent for him was undeniable. And I asked him after the game, how, did it take some time to adjust? And he said, yes, it did. And it took a decent amount of time. But you saw there was a week in practice where I heard about him being Caden's go-to guy. He caught like a ridiculous amount of touchdowns in a red zone drill, like 5 in like 7 attempts or something. And this was the type of game where you saw on tape what he's capable of. He's a big physical guy. He can move and he can block. Although it wasn't going his way in the passing game first couple of weeks, he was putting his head down and blocking, was a solid run blocker, and still was this game. This week he gets going in the pass game. Credit to him, credit to Caden for finding him. He almost had 3 touchdowns there. He broke the seam on that one down the middle, but got tackled. But, I'm interested to see how that develops. I mean, that looked good. And if you can have a weapon over the middle, which has kind of been the weak spot at times for the passing game, and then you have Wasim and Messer, and like you mentioned, there's weapons all over the place.
If I'm not mistaken, the Assad Wasim touchdown, 37 yards, was the first 4th down conversion, and the second 4th down conversion was what you just mentioned, that 41-yard throw over the middle where Rice absolutely sold out on the run, and Veldkamp RPO just put it right in the chest of Kirch, and he raced all the way down to the 10-yard line. I believe that was the other 4th down conversion. Not bad. On 4th down, both of your attempts in a game, 37 yards, touchdown, 41 yards, 1st and goal. That'll get it done. For everybody that's been critical of Zach Kittley going for it on 4th down, that's a pretty explosive response right there. That'll do. That will absolutely do. Christian messages in. They have Legos. So here's the background on that. Rice, to commemorate the 75th anniversary of Rice Stadium, has come out with a Lego set, which actually looked like it's more hospitable than actual Rice Stadium. And so, FAU goes in, and at least you can say, oh, well, Rice has the Legos. I would never use Legos in a derogatory sense. I'll tell you what, Robbie, I don't know about you. I don't know about your upbringing. I know you have developed into a very respectful young man who's doing good things in the world, and you've acclimated to society extremely well. But Legos were a key component of my childhood. One of my most my most proud achievements as an 8-year-old was building an entire massive, like, 1,500 piece pirate Lego ship, or pirate ship, Lego pirate ship. So I don't know about you, but I have an appreciation for Legos that goes past being petty towards Rice football.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I definitely had them as a kid. I like the cool stuff like that. If I would have gone if I knew, ahead of time. I'm not dropping $300 on a ticket just to get that. But if I knew, like months ago when tickets were under like $100 flat, oh yeah, I'm going for that because I'm looking at my desk here. I have a Travis Scott bobblehead next to a Nestor Cortez bobblehead next to a Jack McKeon bobblehead. I mean, the Rice Football Stadium.
That is random. That is random.
Yeah.
Nestor Cortez, Jack McKeon, and Travis Scott.
Yes, because his baseball field is over here.
Oh yeah,
Necktie Park. So they gave out one. So, but yeah, long story short, I thought that would be a cool thing to add to my collection. But I don't know. I looked at the pictures of it. I didn't really see the resemblance. But hey, to each their own.
Michael Kirch had a great game. Easton Messer had a phenomenal game, and then defensively. Drew in the chat, this matchup was perfect for Stolsky. He's a true thumper, reminds me of Dante Hightower back in the Belichick Patriots days. He lives for stuffing the run up the middle. Yes, and in the second half, that's shown especially. Tyler Stolsky was everywhere. And against in-option offense, I 100% agree with Drew here. Tyler Stolsky, who, by the way, had his digits on his left hand visible for the first time this season. The club, that massive American Gladiator joust club that he's been wearing, starting to decrease in size a little bit. He was able to use the fingers on his left hand for the first time. He's making progress. I saw him, his family was there in Houston, and they wanted to, as he was walking into the stadium for the game, they wanted to actually physically see his fingers. And so it certainly makes a difference to grip and to tackle. And he, in the second half especially, he was just lining up Quentin Jackson, just lining up Dalen Alexander. He really looked completely in control as the talented linebacker we know he is for the first time this year. That game was custom fit for Tyler Stolsky. And yeah, him and Leon Hart both, that right there, that showed so much glimpse into what this linebacker group can be. Without question, there were some violent hits. There was some big thumping going on in there.
Yeah, they did a really good job. The linebacker core, even Kamari Johnson got involved, and he was questionable coming in the game. For them to all really play well against the run, the whole team as a whole only had 3 missed tackles on the day. I mean, I believe last week they had 12. So for them to cut that number down in by that much, I mean, that's huge. And so I mean, the Big Ten for Stolsky, he never played against the option, but if you can't play against the option, you're not going to be in the Big Ten. That's just like, you need to be a smart linebacker like that. Different offenses are going to do different things. And, Leon Hart showed they can do those things. And, they're going to have to do it again in a couple of weeks. And now this week, they're going to have to be, more involved in the coverage department. So big game this week, and hopefully they can use that to kind of build momentum going forward.
Back to fourth down for a second. And Chris Parcells is going to have to answer this for me as well. He poses our next question, but I can't remember, Chris, in your time at FAU, if you went up against an option offense or a triple option offense. I can't remember. Let us know. Does Kitley have a stat guy to help with the probabilities of going for it? I think he has someone in his ear, but I also, Kitley goes by, he's explained, yes, it's feel, but he also will go by the book as well. Analytics play a big part in how Zach Kitley prepares his decision-making in-game, his preparation for a game on the offensive side. But he does acknowledge there is some feel that goes into it. If he thinks that maybe if the book says, hey, don't do this, Zach Kitley, he really believes in, but hey, if I believe in my personnel and I feel like this could really drop a hammer, I'm going to give it a go. And you could argue those 2 4th downs that he decided to go for, and the 1 4th down that he decided not to go for, won this game. So FAU gets the 4th down touchdown, Assad Wasim. FAU gets the 41-yard pass play to Michael Kirch on a 4th down, and I believe it was 4. And then FAU deep in Rice's territory. They're up 24-17 at that point. And Zach Kittley absolutely could have gone for it. I might be wrong with it might have been 24-14 at that point. But yeah, it would have been 24-14, I believe, at that point. So he decides not to go for it on fourth down, brings out Garrison Smith, hits the field goal, and that made it 27-14 at that point. 13-point lead for FAU. And how important did that turn out to be? Because Rice would go down the field, they would score a touchdown, and FAU, it didn't look like they were going to be able to get out of their own end on the possession, the final possession, where Veltkamp converted the 10-yard run for a fourth down, and FAU would be able to run out the clock. But if Rice, the whole perspective of the end of the game changes if it's FAU doesn't get it on fourth down and they have to settle for turning the ball over on downs, and it turns into 24-21 with 2.5 minutes left to go, as opposed to 27-21. You'd have had to put Rice in a situation to score a touchdown. Luckily, then that scenario never played out. That hypothetical never came to be. But Zach Kittley showed some restraint based on what we've seen in the later stages of the fourth quarter, settled for the field goal, and that ultimately, in retrospect, ended up being the right move. So that's where, when he decides to go for it on fourth down, it is a little bit more than just the book, because I think the book would probably tell you there where FAU was deep into Rice territory. It would be telling you, hey, go for it here.
Mm-hmm. It probably would have. And what also was big about that drive is FAU goes 13 plays, 76 yards, and they take up 6 minutes and 33 seconds. And so although Rice was able to go down the field in under 3 minutes, which for their offense, that's quick. That's really good for them. But that it didn't give them enough time. By the time their drive was over, there was under 4 minutes, 3:19, and FAU never let them get the ball back. So for them to be able, for FAU's offense to be able to have the second longest drive of the game, the longest one that resulted in points, because Rice's 14-play drive before the end of the half resulted in a missed field goal, that's huge. I mean, if you ask Kittley if he, before the game, if he thought he would have the longest scoring drive of the game, he'd probably tell you no. And so that's a big momentum shifting drive for the FAU offense. And yeah, you sometimes Kittley probably would go for it there, but for them to end in points and make it harder, even though it's only 13, why not? And that was, I brought that up. I asked him, kind of about the conservativeness of it, as I mentioned. And, he was trusting his defense, and they did their job for the most part.
I don't want to jinx it, but Garrison Smith has a really damn strong right leg. I mean, he is consistent from a field goal standpoint. And of note, Robbie, I'm sure you noticed Logan Lupo, the holder, yesterday for FAU. We had been discussing sort of the issues and I'm not trying to bag on Andrew Nelms, but we were discussing some of the issues he was having holding on to snaps. It happened against FIU. It happened against Memphis. So Logan Lupo tagged in as the holder, and it was a pretty clean operation for FAU, including that aforementioned field goal that put FAU up 27-14. It was a high snap, and Lupo was able to bring it down, no problems. Garrison Smith blasted it through, and everything worked out. Now, speaking of field goals, well documented. FIU right before halftime, Caden Veltkamp interception. FIU came out in the third quarter. Momentum had totally shifted to that side of the field, and they ran over Florida Atlantic. Last week, you have the lead over Memphis. But then Memphis takes the football. They have a slow, methodical 2-minute drill with 5 runs in 11 plays. And they, despite being outplayed for 30 minutes, end up taking the lead, going to the locker room 17-16. Yesterday, Rice coming down the field. But then FAU's defense started to get a little bit stubborn at the end of that. And I want to bring up the actual play-by-play of this, because FAU, towards the end of this possession for Rice, ended up really bowing up. And what helped was a Braylon Walker offensive pass interference that pushed Rice from the 25 to the 40. FAU would force an incompletion on the very next day. Dylan Williams made a fantastic pass breakup. FAU would allow Quentin Jackson to get 11 yards of that back, but then Enoch Goda misses from 47 yards, and for the first time this year, really, in competitive games that FAU was playing, they go to the locker room, and the final sequence of the second quarter actually fell in their favor. Yeah, they got the help of the pass interference call, but that ended up being strong. They held out. They were able to force the field goal miss, and I told Chris Newbold at halftime, I wonder what that's going to do to the second half. I wonder if that's a little bit of what this team needed, was feeling good going to the locker room, and it certainly seemed like that made a difference, right?
Yeah, it definitely did. That was the last question I asked Kitley after the game, and he definitely said it was huge. He's still not pleased with the third quarter results just yet, but it didn't turn into a doom quarter, which is the biggest thing. You can have mistakes, you can have things to work on, but don't have the doom quarter where you get outscored 22-0 and then you're in a hole. That did not happen. They did, their offense kind of stalled a little bit at times, and Rice, what they did in third. Did they even score in the third? I'm not even sure off the top of my head, but nevertheless, for them to take momentum in the locker room is massive. Some people don't believe in momentum, but it gets in people's heads. It does. And for them to not even allow any points is huge. For them to miss that field goal, that gets everyone hyped up, and it definitely did help. It was getting a little concerning there. Rice was down. That was their longest drive of the game. Rice looked like they were doing their thing, getting into their rhythm. 14 plays, 46 yards, but they missed a field goal, and all of a sudden, any chance of their momentum is out the window. So very big for them, and I wonder, how they try to. You can't really replicate momentum, but it's in the back of their mind now that when they were able to have that, they won. So we'll see what they do.
So that was promising. I think that foretold a lot there. By the way, FAU and Rice 7-7 in the third quarter. And yeah, no death quarter for FAU last night. No death quarter. Against FIU, death quarter was the third quarter. Against Maryland, death quarter was the second quarter. Against Memphis, fourth quarter was the death quarter. Yesterday, didn't happen. FAU only outscored in one quarter. That was the fourth quarter, 7-3, and a lot went into that, including FAU really trying to eat up some clock through portions of that fourth quarter as well. So getting a win on the road is so key in this spot. It is so key. But you would like to see more in the run game. I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to be overly feasible here. We saw one series of Jamari Sands. The rest of it was Xavier Terrell. This offensive line, I think, is still struggling to open up space in the run game for the tailbacks. But credit where credit's due. And we've been critical of the offensive line. And coaches have been critical of the offensive line. But in pass protection last night, Robbie, you looked at the numbers. You looked at the numerical evidence of this, thanks to Pro Football Focus. FAU had far and away its best pass protection game from that front five. That it was objectively strong, and Caden Veldkamp objectively had a whole lot of time to distribute the football.
Yeah, we were, I was interested to see how it would go with Jacavian Nonar back there at left tackle after they were able to have success with the group they had last week for the most part. And credit him, he's not letting whatever injury he had affect him this week, because him and Gene through that left side, when they needed yards on that last drive, they were going that way. And Terrell, and he's pushing up field, and instead of, sideline to sideline, he is a strong runner, and that's when they were able to have success in the run game. He had close to 70 yards, 20 carries, and that's all they needed. So, but in the pass protection department, Vinny Fiacable was the only one to allow a sack on the day. Nobody else allowed a single pressure, no sacks, no hits, no hurries, no nothing. Martavius Collins at tight end had a hurry allowed, and that was it. So it was a clean game for Caden. And the last 2 weeks, Caden has had the best protection he's had all season, and it has led to, Caden did have that one overthrow, but other than that, it's not like the first couple weeks where balls are getting overthrown. He's running around. He's throwing multiple interceptions where you're concerned. Now the offensive line is given him protection, and it has helped. And yes, the number on it, it was their highest PFF grade of the season far and away. Let's see. 88.1. Their previous was 78.8 against Florida A&M. Pro Football Focus grades aren't the end-all be-all of things, but when it's a way to kind of chart things at least, and you see the difference. They haven't had a grade in the 80s the entire season in this game with Veldkamp only getting sacked once, only getting pressured separately one other time. That's a B+.
Veldkamp leads the American, and it would be shocking if this changes at all in passing attempts. I mean, Zach Kittley wants to air it out. Caden Veldkamp wants to air it out. But it just, at some point, if you're going to get to 6 wins, you've got to have a more effective rushing attack. And again, Sands being banged up definitely doesn't help. Xavier Terrell can only do so much, and he came up with some bigger, runs and key moments last night. But he's not a bulk back, and he's being used as a bulk back right now. He's more of a scat back, change of pace back. This isn't him, and he's doing a really admirable job of his touches back there. Caden Shields-Dutton, we saw him a couple of times late in this game as well. I don't know what the fix would be other than the fact it's just got to be more stout up front, and hopefully that continues to progress. On the I think it's safe to say the game-winning Caden Veldkamp conversion on 3rd and 8 from his own 19. Yes, Veldkamp broke a tackle, and that was gutsy. And Zach Kittley said after the game, we saw it. We set up that play based on what we ran the previous 2 plays, which one of them was almost a Caden Veldkamp fumble. Holy hell. I mean, I almost had the contents of my stomach come back and reappear after I saw him bobble that ball. But Alex Atcavage made a phenomenal space-clearing block in the middle of that, wiped out the tackle. That allowed Veldkamp the room he needed, because by that time, the tackle, he grabbed Veldkamp's jersey, but his momentum is pulling him backwards. He wasn't able to get any sort of leverage on Veldkamp, and that's what allowed Veldkamp to run right between the tackles. That's winning football. That's good execution in a key moment. That is what makes the difference. And so, yeah, from a run game standpoint, was the FAU offensive line excellent? No. But in that moment, in that particular moment, everybody did their job, and that ended up winning the football game. So I wanted to take the time to point out that the offensive line, this was certainly its best performance of the year against this caliber of opponent, and Caden Veldkamp was pretty clean. He was pretty clean all night long.
Yeah, it definitely was. And, credit to them for finding ways to try to get Caden, the run game going with Caden. At times it wasn't working. They was only getting a couple yards, but set themselves up for that big gain there, and it worked out. I don't think that's the long-term solution to try to get the run game going. You don't want to run him too much because can't have that happen. I mean, obviously he's athletic enough to get some yards there and get you a first down when you need it, but you don't want to turn him into a rushing quarterback of any type of caliber because gosh forbid he gets hurt. That'll set the offense back a million years. So credit to Terrell though. He's not a bulk back, but 20 carries, 69 yards, grinding out 3.5 yards. You give him the ball 3 times, that's a first down. That's all you can ask for out of Terrell. Caden Shields-Dutton, 4.8 yards per carry on only 4 carries. That's still solid. And Jamari, before he got hurt, he was averaging upwards of 6 yards a carry. So there was some success there. Obviously some of it, a lot of it was against FAMU. And so whatever, take that as you will. But they have to find ways to get that going, like you mentioned. And Sam's obviously wasn't 100% this week. Hopefully with a little bit more rest and they can get him going, next week against UAB. Obviously their run defense hasn't been top notch. And so there could be a chance to, spark things. But I'd like to see, they've made adjustments week by week. It's not at times last year, the adjustments would take time to see any type of progress. Now you're seeing it week to week. Cade was turning it over. No, then he goes to no turnovers. On the defensive side of the ball, you have no pass rush, and all of a sudden you go to your best pass rush game of the season against Memphis. Run defense. You had no run defense against Memphis. Now you have run defense against Rice. So now this week will be the key. Let's get the run game going. And from what I've seen so far, they'll find a way to spark something new. Will it turn into 250 yards and 4 scores on the ground? Probably not, but it'll get something going. Hopefully, at least.
I want to talk about the wide receiver room for a moment. I think you can make the case that them, along with the corners, those are the deepest rooms on the roster. You now have your wide receiver room has suddenly turned extremely formidable. I'm not sure, and someone's going to message me, oh, why are you disrespecting this group? But even going back to the Conference USA Championship teams, I cannot recall an FAU receiver room for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And God knows I've seen a lot of receiver rooms at Florida Atlantic. But the Easton Messer, Jay Sean Platt, Dom Henry receiver room, where you're starting to see depth all over the place, this is as formidable as it gets. It's consistent. There's good hands all over the place. There's explosion from all three of those wide receivers. As long as they stay healthy, there are not many American Conference receiver groups that are better. I think we saw Memphis. I think they're the superior wide receiver group in the conference. They're big. They're strong. They've got awesome hands. Watch the Sports Center Top 10 this morning if you get a chance, because Memphis had another all-world touchdown catch on a fade against Tulsa last night that clocked in at number 3. They're nasty. They're really, really nasty. But this one right here, I put them up against the vast majority of the teams in this conference. They are really starting to come into their own, and it really helps when you're sure-handed. Like a drop from this group, and it's a stunner. Like these guys, this is an excellent, excellent wide receiver group.
Yeah, I don't give the Willie Taggart too much credit for that era, but what he did do is he had some good wide receiver rooms there. You look at Tony Johnson, Jamal Edrin, and LeJohn. So that was a good room, but this group are, there's that same type of athleticism there. I want to see J.R. Wilson or Quincy Brown get going, so you have an Edrin type of big guy out there. But other than that, the athleticism is there. And so, you look at last night at times, the Messer had a drop. He slipped on his route, and Caden missed him, but he's still able to put up 11 yards for 100 or 11 receptions for 100 yards, and didn't let those little things get to him. And so, I agree. The depth of the room is huge too, because I mentioned that trio there, but outside of that trio, there wasn't much help outside of Johnson, Edrin, and Wester back then. And so now you have options in that room depth-wise. You go all the way down to the freshmen. You look at how Brandon Hoke's made some plays. I don't know if we'll see him again this season, maybe a redshirt. We haven't seen him since those early couple games. But, there's depth. There's talent that's already on the field. That's a dangerous wide receiver room for sure. I'm interested to see how some of those other guys who haven't got involved yet. You look at the Jabari Smith. JR was out this week. I say it every week, JR and Quincy. I want to see them go. And I always want a big receiver to get going, but we'll see. There's a ton of talent in that room, though, for sure.
How many to go to the other side defensively? One quick note: the corners, the defensive backs, very willing tacklers. Zach Kitley talked about it against an option offense. Those are guys who are going to have to stick their nose in there. They're going to have to accept the contact. We already knew that those guys are fine with tackling. And we talked about Tyler Stolsky, how this game was custom-made for him. This game was also custom-made for Wendell Fullord. He wants to missile his way around the field, and he did just that. He was violent. He had outstanding pursuit. I want to give some special attention there to Wendell Fullord. And I thought for the most part, other than the 46-yard third-quarter touchdown that Rice had, the safety play was pretty good for Florida Atlantic as well. I believe that was Jaden Williams who got lost on the back end on that 46-yard touchdown. But then the defensive front, linebacker / defensive front, the front seven. How many tackles for loss did they have against Rice, Robbie?
Let's see.
Was it 8?
Let's see. It's loading.
I believe.
Yeah, 8. They did have 8. Leon Hart Jr. had 1.5. Eric Brantley had 1.5. Jaden Sweeney had 1. Kamari Johnson had 1. And Wendell Phillord had 1. Sharquez Lee also had 1. Who filled in for Zaire Horton, presumably. And so that's good to see. Young linebacker there. Always got to build up that linebacker core. You saw a bunch of them on the injury report this week, so not a ton of depth for them that room. So if you're getting plays from Sharquez Lee, that's big. Robert Lee potentially the next man up should something else happen. So that was good to see. And they said it on the broadcast too. Shout out to Ladarian McLean, who I think did a really good job on the broadcast last night. Color analyst, on that deep ball, it just seemed like Jaden got a little bit too aggressive there, and we saw that happen last week. It seems like, little plays like that can't happen. It's got to find a way where if they're aggressive, have help over the top, or, sometimes you don't know necessarily. I got to go back and watch that play because Jaden may have been so aggressive on that play because he thought he may have had help over the top. You don't know. So I got to go back and watch that one. But overall, really, really strong game. Chris Keys making a big play on that PBU as well.
Yeah. I thought Chris Keys overall had a good night, and he was unfortunately part of the breakdown, filling the gap and making a tackle on the 68-yard touchdown run that Rice had on the opening possession. But he wasn't by himself. That wasn't just him. Leon Hart was involved in that as well. There was a defensive lineman involved in that as well. So, again, not going to isolate him, but my point is all of these guys bounced back, put it behind them, moved on to the next. All right, what I'm about to do is going to come off as, oh, here we go. Here's Ken trying to cook the numbers, trying to alter the numbers to fit his pro FAU narrative. But if you take away the 68-yard touchdown run, if you take it away, say it's a 3-yard run, okay? FAU holds Rice and that rushing attack to a $145. Like, think about that. Rice ran for 4.4 a carry last night, which was immensely inflated by the 68-yard touchdown run. On its own, holding an option offense running game to 4.4 yards a carry in a game is a coach would think, hey, we put ourselves in a position to win. If it wasn't for the 68-yard touchdown, that's sub 4. We're talking like 3.5 yards a carry on the ground. The point I'm making is that is compared to what this has been in the past from this defense against option offenses, the way most defenses handle option offenses, this was a rich, encouraging, physical, violent performance from FAU. They, again, other than the big play, they won the line of scrimmage pretty consistently in this game against a team that gave Navy problems last week, like Rice did. A team that has shown marked improvement from where they were a year ago with a new head coach. And FAU really sort of handled that stable of really good backs.
Yeah, I'll give another quote here from Ladarian. And, if you told me a TV analyst would be saying this after what I saw last week against Rice, I'd have you in the asylum, locked up with the fuzzy socks. He said, Ladarian McLean after the game said, if you're not ready for how they play football at FAU, you better get ready. Buckle your chin straps. Make sure your shoulder pads are tight because this defense is coming to hit you and run through you. And that was true against Rice. I mean, look at the play late in that game where, Rice eventually did score, but Leon Hart leveled Chase Jenkins, and legally, like no targeting, no 15-yard, like he leveled him. He was a receiver or a playmaker in the field, whatever you call it, and he hit him. And again, shout out to McLean. He was like, yeah, I've had a couple of those where I'm still feeling them. 30 years later. So that was a big hit. The physicality was there from FAU. And yeah, that was not what they showed last week. There was physicality for sure. It's not like they were playing soft last week, but for a TV analyst to notice that and make it a theme, that's big. That's big time against an option team. For you to dominate the physicality, the line of scrimmage, that's you putting up, and that's huge.
You still have a couple of minutes to jump in the chat here. Live edition of the Florida Atlantic Voice, the day after Rice edition. FAU now 2-3, 1-1 in the American. And just to reiterate, because I think it's important, Robbie and I last week, 7 days ago, after the loss to Memphis, said these next two games, Rice UAB, this was going to determine whether or not FAU was going to flirt with 6 wins, which, again, is the objective this year. Certainly you want to compete for championships, but when you're a program in the situation FAU is, 6 wins, that's a victory, and you build from that. These 2 weeks were going to be the indicator, Rice UAB, and you've already passed one of the tests on the road against a place that has been a largely house of horrors for Florida Atlantic. I still cannot forget and never will forget the 2013 game there at Rice, where Greg Hankerson, backup quarterback, was forced into action due to injury. FAU had completely stymied Rice all night long. It's 14-6 with 7 minutes left. All FAU has to do is continue to just pick up first downs. Rice had sub 100 yards in total offense in that game to that point. Greg Hankerson fumbles, ball rolls to the 7, scoop and score. Rice is within 2 points at that point. FAU gets it back after the kickoff. 2 plays later, interception for Rice, and it's run back to the 20. But then there was a personal foul. So Rice gets pushed back to the 45. And then what happens? FAU commits a pass interference on the next play. Rice a touchdown run. They take the lead with 2.5 minutes left to go. And then Greg Hankerson, for good measure, throws an interception 2 plays later to end any comeback hopes for Florida Atlantic. That is right up there with Carl Pelini shocking South Alabama loss, with Charlie Partridge shocking Tulsa loss, with Charlie Partridge shocking Wyoming loss. This one fits all that criteria. If you're of a certain age, a certain year's accumulation of FAU fandom, you know what I'm talking about. Those just improbable losses, not only snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, but bludgeoning victory and stealing defeat from jaws. So this was nice to come back and get a win like this. And I don't think that 27-21 even tells, much like 55-26 didn't tell the full story of Memphis FAU, 27-21 did not tell the full story of FAU and Rice.
No, yeah. I mean, my only recent experience with Rice was the one a couple years ago. That game was also awful. FAU had a chance in that one. And
was that 2023 season finale?
Yeah.
That's the game where Rice got bowl eligibility off of that.
Yep, and I thought FAU had a chance to spoil it. I was in the area. I was like, oh, yeah, I'll go cover this first time. I mean, credit. That was a fun experience. Got to cover a game in that stadium, but I don't think I'll ever go back. And then I'd have to go back. I'm not a big gambler, but I'd have to go back, and I want to find out how many times FAU has actually won in recent times on the road as an underdog in the betting lines. They were 4-point underdogs in that game, and
if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, that's not I'm not what the Greek guy from the TV show way back when, but that's just a big win that you haven't seen at times in recent years from FAU. So credit to them for going out there and getting that win, and I want to get that momentum against UAB, keep it rolling, because you can really pick up a big win that I don't know the last time you beat a potentially ranked team on the road. We'll see how USF does next week, but get some momentum going into Tampa. No one thought Daniel Richardson was going into Tampa a couple of years ago and lighting them up for all over the field. And what happened in that game, no one expected. So anything's possible, but FAU's got to keep building on their success from this week.
One thing I will say, FAU is in no position to overlook UAB at all. UAB might be winless, but FAU, when you're trying to grind your way to 6 here, and you beat Rice, but You can. This program can't take anything for granted. So, yeah, USF is on the way. Your Navy's on the way. But first things first, it's UAB on Saturday. Matthew says, you told that story about the Greg Hankerson game. Thanks for the reminder of my freshman year. Matthew, I'm sorry for that. If you want, I can give you a reminder of your junior year when Rice came to Boca Raton. Florida Atlantic had opened up a double-digit lead, and then a lightning delay came beginning of the fourth quarter, and Florida Atlantic sat in the locker room for an hour and a half before they tried to convert a 2-point conversion, and that ended up being unsuccessful. And then all of a sudden, Dreyfus Jackson, who is the quarterback for Rice, he hadn't done much at all during the course of the game. They come out of that weather delay in the fourth quarter, and he looks like prime Lamar Jackson, and FAU ends up losing 27-26 in your junior year. So, Matthew, you take your pick in your college career at Florida Atlantic. Which one hurt more, 2013 against Rice or 2015 against Rice? And again, you're welcome. The FAU secondary, just to hit on this, Rice came in fifth in the nation with its two corners, allowing only 55.1% completion rate. The two Rice corners and the secondary as a whole, teams were only hitting Rice's pass defense at 55.1%, fifth best in the country. Caden Veldkamp was a 70% passer last night against Rice. I said it over and over and over again last week, over and over again. Yeah, Rice, pass defense, 30th in the country. Yes, Rice's secondary has been able to eat, and it's been tough to throw on them, but the offenses that Rice has faced, including the fourth worst passing offense, Louisiana, early in the season, were nothing like Rice was going to see when Florida Atlantic came to town. And boy, was that an easy prediction to make, what FAU was able to do with not only Veldkamp, but the speed of the FAU receivers. Florida Atlantic's speed advantage with the wideouts compared to the secondary of Rice. It was like watching the prelims of the Olympics, where it's like Usain Bolt against some poor guy from Hungary who's like the lone representative from the country in track and field. Like, that's what it looked like at times last night.
Yeah, an area where Caden bounced back specifically was in the middle of the field. 10 of 14, and, he did have his one interception over there of the middle, but he was able to hit that big touchdown to Kirch over the middle as well. And so I brought that up before. I think Kirch's, coming out party is huge for that middle of the field, because if you can open up that middle of the field, that's going to make safeties kind of forced to cover that middle of the field, and then that leaves one-on-one opportunities on the outside where your burners like Wasim, like Platt, like Messer can get going. And so, what comes back to me, though, is that flea flicker that you busted out there mid-game. You got to find a way to hit on that.
That's a touchdown.
That's a touchdown. There's another one where Messer was down the sidelines, and obviously I'm just nitpicking at this point. But when you bust out the flea flicker, it's the only time you can bust it out, and you gotta hit on it. But for them to bounce back in the middle of the field, hit 10 of 14. I'm bad at percentages, but that's pretty good. And so, yeah, an important bounce back game for Veldkamp. Continuing, he had his bounce back game last week. This week he did have that interception, so you don't want to cut that back out. But overall, 70%, that'll win you ball games.
Before we wrap up, and again, thank you to everybody for hanging out with us here on the day after edition of the Florida Atlantic Voice. FAU takes down Rice. If you're watching live right now, obviously, if after the fact you're listening, this it's going to be tough for a visual, but I'll try and paint the picture as a good play-by-play broadcaster does. I am wearing, this is an old FAU basketball shirt, Owls basketball right now, and it is blue and it is white. It is obviously also the colors of Rice, but I promise it was an FAU issued shirt for a Mike Jarvis FAU basketball season. I covered the Dolphins. You might not know this, Robbie. I covered the Dolphins. I was a beat reporter for the Dolphins for ESPN from 2008 to 2013, down there every day in Davie, and that was the entirety of the Bill Parcells team president era down there. And so this is when training camp and when practice day-to-day operations are still out of Davie, not across the street from the stadium like they are now. And so you had the Nick Saban Memorial Bubble that the Dolphins, if there was inclement weather, would go into to practice. And there was one day in particular, I believe it was the 2009 season, because I remember seeing Pat White walking into the bubble, and I'm standing there waiting to go in with the rest of the assembled media, and I'm wearing this shirt, and Bill Parcells comes walking out of the bubble to head back into the facility, and he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, Rice, huh?" And I said, "No, Florida Atlantic." And he goes, and walked right by me, the old grump, back into the facility. And I remember thinking to myself how disrespectful that was, that Bill Parcells in South Florida now, his first thought comes to Rice. I mean, what has Rice done in the recent past? And this was 2009, and FAU didn't even come to mind for him. So what I'll say, Bill Parcells, if you're watching right now, or if you're eventually listening, or your subconscious somehow picks up that I'm talking about you right now, understand that it makes me feel good that Florida Atlantic beat Rice and dispels your notion that Rice would be greater than FAU in the grand scheme of things, the scope of college athletics. How about that? I needed to get that off my chest.
There you go. I mean, the people, they copied our owl walk a couple years ago. There's too many correlations. Too many correlations. Owls had to prove they were the more dominant owl. No matchup with Temple this year, but we'll get our matchup in basketball later in the year. Speaking of basketball, media day this week. We'll get to learn a lot more about the John Jacobs year 2 era Owls here coming up. So that'll be something interesting. We could have a fun end of football season coinciding with a fun start to basketball season.
November 3rd, it'll be FAU hosting Boston College. By the way, that'll be the opening game of the season there at the Ellie. I want to make sure everybody knows, little plug here, Monday Night Live from Beer Garden in Boca Raton. Robbie's been there. He has enjoyed himself. And if you come out to Monday Night Live, again, live show, Florida Atlantic Voice, that will be available as a podcast after the fact, per usual, for those who can't come out. But come out, first beer on me, Ken LaVicka, the Ken LaVicka guarantee. You come out and you get your first drink, and I've got you covered. And they have outstanding specials, including a tubed meat bratwurst special that is out of this world. They have some of the best sausages in all of South Florida. The most unique restaurant, in my opinion, in all of South Florida is Beer Garden in Boca Raton, right off of Federal, just north of the Boca Resort. Come out, eat some brats, have a first beer on me, and then you can negotiate with me for like a second or a third. That's up to you, though, and it depends on what mood I'm in. And I think my good pal, Damon Arnett, is going to come out there and hang out with me as well. So come out, 6 o'clock tomorrow, Monday Night Live. Come out, hang with us, and get you ready for Monday Night Football, which I believe is the Jags and who the hell else is it? The Chiefs. The Chiefs and the Jags on Monday Night Football. Robbie, excellent work as always. Appreciate you. I was a complete mess this morning. I was frazzled and I was sleepy and I wasn't fully caffeinated yet. So thanks for hanging in there. And we'll talk to you next Sunday after hopefully Florida Atlantic hits the 500 mark with UAB coming in. So good work, my friend. Have a good rest of your Sunday.
You too. Big weekend coming up. It's homecoming, alumni weekend for a lot of different fraternities. So this is a big crowd coming up. It's a big crowd potentially. You never know. But 7 p.m. game with family weekend. Hopefully get a big crowd and hopefully get a big win. We'll see. And
don't forget, Friday night, Trey Hendrickson, Dijon Smith, Harrison Bryant all get inducted into the FAU Athletics Hall of Fame. From a football standpoint, there are other inductees, but just from a football perspective, those 3 are going in, and those 3 will be in Boca Raton on Friday night. I don't know, other than Dijon, I can't imagine that Trey and Harrison are going to be able to stay Saturday for the game because, well, they have work to do on Sunday of next week. But I'm looking forward. I'm emceeing the Hall of Fame induction dinner on Friday night. Can't wait for it. It's been a while since I've seen all 3 of those guys, any 3 of those guys. The last time I saw Harrison Bryant Might have been 2019. I've talked to him. Last time I saw Trey Hendrickson was during the NCAA tournament 2023. And then Dijon Smith, other than talking with him over Instagram a couple of times, I haven't really seen him face-to-face in a while. So really looking forward to seeing that on Friday. Don't forget, presenting partner, the only reason we can do this on the Florida Atlantic Voice is Robes Law Group, personal injury lawyers, ROBES, robeslawgroup.com, ROBES, robeslawgroup.com. For Robbie Lastella, New Era Preps, I am Ken LaVicka. Don't forget, audio version of this about an hour from now, from when we stop recording on all of your podcast entities, the Florida Atlantic Voice, the day after FAU beats Rice 27-21. I am Ken LaVicka. We'll talk to you tomorrow from Beer Garden in Boca Raton, Monday Night Live. This has been the Florida Atlantic Voice. Bye-bye.